Hi, my name is Fabian. I'm a Salesforce architect based in Cologne, Germany, and I'm complaining about Salesforce since 2018. So, jokes aside, but maybe you know me from LinkedIn. In the end, I'm loving Salesforce, but yeah, there's something to complain at the moment. But I'm here to show you something fancy. I hope you will learn something. And so we start with speed and scalability, why it matters, and how to measure it when it comes to flows. Okay, so why are we here? We love flows, but sometimes they are getting a little bit messy. Salesforce is pushing this whole flow topic. In every release notes, they have a lot of new functionality when it comes to flows. There are good things. You can build them really quickly. Totally fine. But in the end, not everything is perfect. So, like my uncle is saying, with great power comes great responsibility. And what happens if great power is not used properly will be shown on the next slide. So, sometimes we end up with a shitty org. So when you talk to customers, they say, yeah, it's historical grown, we cannot do something against it, it is how it is. But no, we can do something against it. We need to do at some point something against it. And these are all excuses. And we are here to find a way to get rid of them. So there are a lot of reasons. I don't want to get into details. For example, the migration tool from Salesforce is also a big problem. They sold it as a solution to get rid of process builders and workflow rules, and in the end, you end up with critical nodes, and everything is in after context. Not what you think about when you're not a professional and see there's a new tool which should solve my problem. It's not solving our problems, it's making it even worse sometimes. But how can we move forward with the situation? Yeah, we want the all-purpose Allrounder. So in Germany there is a word for that. It's a eierlegende Wollmilchsau. So you have milk, you have eggs, you have wool, you have meat, everything from one animal, and this is exactly what we need. Yeah, but this is not existing. And to be honest, there's also no secret sauce. So when we start with basics, I think we are on a good way, building good structure. Yeah, of course, in enterprise projects, you always come to a point where you need to adjust your whole frameworks, or your or new complexity will come in, new record types, new custom objects, new trigger points, new entry criteria. This is totally fine, but when we start from scratch, we should at least start with good fundament of quality. So we should understand what is before and after context. Of course, we should not use DML operation in loops, but we should also be aware of the get element, that we don't use it that often if we don't need it. Maybe we should also think about asynchronous path. So this is an option, but it's not that often used in my projects. And with every new release, we have good new functionality. For example, in the get element, we have the in operator. We have the brand new transform element. You can use it instead of loops and save a lot of time. And some smaller guidance, like you can directly pass the record ID as a record into a screen flow instead of defining it as a text field. So this is just a small one at the end. Yeah, but wait, what was the topic of the session? So it's about how to measure it, right? So maybe you know architects.salesforce.com. This is a really great blog. You have a lot of things all around well architect framework, but also when it comes to automations. And there is a dedicated section to trigger automations. And there's a comparison between workflow rules, process builder, and Apex and Flows. You will come with the hint maybe, yeah, this is outdated. Okay, it's outdated, fine, but it's a good entry point to think about all the situation. So of course, still Apex is better or faster than Flow, but you see a huge difference between after and before context. So it's more or less 100 milliseconds. Takes longer in the after context when you build a logic there with flows instead of building it in the before context. So maybe in your mind is something like, okay, 100 milliseconds, who cares? Why should I care about 100 milliseconds? Yeah, in general, this is fine, this is true. In our case here, these are only numbers for a single transaction and only one automation. So if we have other use cases, then the numbers look different. So I played around with some numbers and I have something for you. I build some automation on the account object and we update the same record 5 times. And we can do it in before context, we can do it in after context. And in this case, if we work on the same object, best practice is to do it in the before context. So I created 5 really easy flows without conditions or logic, just fire, and I ended up with these numbers. So 300 milliseconds and 508 milliseconds, and this is an increase about 70%. Again, really straightforward and really easy example. And we can also go on with higher numbers, for example. So if we work with a batch of 100 accounts and run the same insert, then we end up with 729 milliseconds and more or less 5 seconds. So now the numbers look different, right? And when you compare it to a real enterprise project, there's even more you can consider and even more trigger points. So let's go on with that. What if we create an account, have the same 5 updates and create 3 different objects? In our example, it is contact, opportunity, and task. So every time we create an account, we create a contact, opportunity, and task, and on these objects we again have automations. So we have on the same objects on contact, account, and contact, opportunity, and task updates on the same record. And now the numbers look different. When we talk about before context, we end up with 628 milliseconds and 1153. So here we talk about 84%, and this is only one single record. I don't know if this is really happening in batches, but if we talk about the numbers, then we end up with almost 10 seconds. So 2 seconds compared to 10 seconds. And in detail, we are more or less, there's a difference between them. The difference is 7 seconds in total. Okay, so some different numbers. I played around with it. I have a whole Excel with it. So I can send it to you if you want to. You can also play around with it. It was a whole new dev org created without our logic, and these are the numbers when you have some comparison between before and after automation. Okay, is there even more? So we talked about the account object. On the account object, do we have assignment rules, auto-response rules, escalation rules, and entitlements? No, we don't have it, but we have it on the case object. And assignment rules, for example, are also running on the lead object. So we have even more complicated objects when it comes to the order of execution. And there, the impact is even higher when you build messy automations and don't take care about entry criteria and the things we talked about before. Okay. What's about sharing? How's sharing working? There's also calculation based on sharing. How are rollups running? How are validation and even duplicate rules working? So all these things, we need to keep it in mind, and we need to measure it, because otherwise maybe we run into problems or timeouts. But how do we measure it? So the easiest one is the developer console. You know how to do it. You go to the wheel icon, you select developer console, you go to debug menu, perspective manager, and set the default to all. Then it's possible to open a log. Of course, you need to activate debug log for your user before, but then you have the debug logs here. You can double click on them, and new windows will open then. The most important one is the execution tree and the performance tree. They are next to each other in the top area. And here you see a breakdown what kind of automations run here. So the main automation is the account. There's a flow running, and this flow is creating the opportunity, task, and contact. And then on the created records, new automations will run. So there is a cascade of automations here. Okay, so this is the high-level entry point for that. You can also move to other tabs like the execution windows and the timeline, and then you see it on the timeline what is occurring and what is firing. If this is not fancy enough, then you can also download an extension for Visual Studio Code. It's called Apex Log Analyzer, and here you have even more opportunities to analyze, to debug, to filter. And this is also a good option to check the options. Okay, so is there even more, or is it all? So we talked about record triggered automations, but what about screen flows? So you can also run some Socket queries based on two objects. They are called flow interview and flow interview log. And I prepared 8 queries for you. Maybe good starting point to investigate. And the first one is which screen flows run most frequently. So this is a production org from a client. I was new to that project, and I don't know what they are doing on the daily business. I saw they have like 30 different screen flows, but they ended up with this distribution here. So more or less everything was working on 2 of them, 2 screen flows. So you saw the huge difference between the top 2 and the other ones. And this was really good knowledge for me. So if one of them is failing, then we have a big problem. Okay, so this is the general overview to query the number of flow interviews and the interviews themselves. What else? So show me all fields for the flow interviews. This is also good when you don't know the object itself. So you can see what is stored here. You see the entry type. You start with it, then you have next. These are all screen flows. So screen next previous, and in the end you finish your flow here. You have a calculated time, so in total, but you also have for every step the time you stay on that screen. So I filtered it directly to one flow. This is a standard one. You have it in a dev sandbox. Create case. You can also play around with it. I think you have three different screens, and yeah, at least it's good enough to start with it and see what kind of records are created by using a screen flow. Okay. Another one for me, it's also good to investigate here to check how long the interviews take. So you can have aggregations, minimum, maximum, and average. And for example, for this create case flow, I check the duration. Yeah, it's a really small one, but if it's a bigger one, you can maybe get some benefits from that. Maybe in the next one you see who's really fast in working with the screen flow, who's not. But these numbers also show you how big is the difference between the minimum and maximum. And the average is, of course, more or less in the middle. So this looks fine for now. Okay. How often will an interview be completed? So here we see almost all of them have been completed. Also nothing else here. But yeah, it's also good to check that. And here we could use the query, for example, to check if new colleagues work properly with the screen flows, or if the new colleagues really differ from more experienced colleagues. Maybe then it's time to give them an additional onboarding or support them or explain some components in the screen flows. Maybe it's also a good point for you to invest more in documentation or add some descriptions when it's not clear what they should fill in the screen flows. Yeah, so this is I think the most detailed level here. It's about the process steps. So we see in the columns element API name, and this is the names you give to the flows, to the flow elements. And you see how often you visit every screen, how often you go back to another screen, and the time you investigate or you take to fill in all the forms. Maybe it is also an indicator that your flows are not designed properly. So if you run this query, for example, and see that oftentimes users go back because they forgot something or something was not clear at this point, then it's a good point to think about realigning your screens or adjust your logic. So filter to the log entry type screen previous. This would be a good identifier for checking the previous button. Okay, so last one, minimum average. So we have had more or less the same report, But for the overall running time for a screen flow, you can also have it for a single screen. So if you have one big screen with maybe some reactive components, this could also be a good point to investigate if some users have problem with that after they clicking something. Yeah, so just some food for thoughts. I haven't seen this kind of measurement before, so I thought it would be a good idea to show it here. The performance tree before is more common, but yeah, I hope this session you enjoyed it. It was helpful for you. If you have questions, if you want the whole calculations behind it, or have questions, feel free to reach out. Since it's recorded, we don't have a proper QA session, but yeah, so don't be shy, message me, and thank you for your time.